Hello everybody and welcome back to La Jaffe Watchworks. Ha ha! Today we have this lovely brooch pendant and it's hiding a little secret. Now this would have been worn on the outside of a jacket by a nice lady back in the early 1900s, but I have other plans for it. But first, I think she's going to need a little bit of maintenance. So, what's that little secret I was talking about? Let's take this back cover off and take a look. Now with a keen eye, you might notice that escapement is a little different than usual. That's because we have this style. They call it a duplex. Thank you, Herr Klentz. First step is to line down the power using the click lever here. Once we've safely let down the power, we can take the movement out of the case. Next, I will remove the hands. Now I choose to use this method because I want to be extremely gentle. There we go. Now it's time to remove this lovely dial. And off comes the hour wheel. Next, we'll remove this back cover plate, we might call it. What this plate does is house and keep the winding gears in check, and it also houses the click. There we have it. And I probably should have started by removing the balance wheel and bridge, so I'll go ahead and do that now. I do this to prevent any damage happening to the most sensitive portion of the watch. And you can see there's still just a bit of energy left in that spring there. This is not really desired, but it was a bit too late. So let's put this away for safekeeping. And now we'll take away the click and the click spring. And now we will remove the ratchet wheel. Gently pry off this bridge. Full plate bridge, I might add. Being extra careful not to snap any pivots off. And there we have it. There's our train of wheels exposed. And I think it's time to give this a nice bath, but we have a little bit more work to do. We've got this small gear that helps us wind the watch. There's the main spring. And there we have it. The disassembly is complete. So now it's time for the pre-cleaning ritual. I'm using a combination of pegwood and toothpicks to really make sure any hardened, dried on oil is removed. And I've sped the video up here a bit to spare you that. In these older watches, they would have used whale oil, and I do believe that was the case the first time I rebuilt this watch. It was rather fishy smelling. I will take apart the balance wheel subassembly off camera and give that a thorough cleaning as well. So my cleaning solution I'm using is Alpa. Not intended for this, but I found that it's a nice substitute. It seems that the standard isopropyl alcohol seems to be very harsh on a lot of parts, and Alpa has a bit of mineral spirits mixed with alcohol, and that seems to be a little gentler on some of the old parts, especially the steel parts. They will rust almost instantly. I've had that happen before using the isopropyl alcohol, and the Alpa seems to be working pretty well so far. Now that's some of the old whale oil I was talking about. I had to clean this again after inspecting all the pieces under the microscope. And here are some shots from that. Look at that escapement wheel. And here's our pivots. Now only the balance wheel is jeweled. But before we get assembly underway, I first need to tighten up this connection. We'll be ready for the assembly process, and on go the finger cots. So patience is the name of the game. And if I haven't mentioned yet, I'll mention now. I am an amateur, and you may have noticed the mistake I've made already. Again, the key is to take your time and don't force anything. So let's try this way. Gonna test if the gears are meshed, and something's not quite right. Do you know what it is? Now I seem to have this seated, but I still have a problem. these are like little puzzles. And for me, that's half the fun, figuring out how they work and enjoy the design that somebody produced 100 years ago. No, something's still not quite right. Oh, wait a minute. I think we're onto something here. Now let's reinstall that second wheel. You could see my nose there in the bottom right. I'm looking through the loop, and there we have it. Now all the gears are meshed. Now it's time for the bridge plate to be put on. Now we want to take extreme care in this step. It can be quite cumbersome and difficult. Patience is crucial for this step because I need to align all of the pivots to their respective holes while maintaining the gears in the correct position and keeping them meshed. This is one of the more dangerous operations. It's very easy to break a pivot at this stage, and that would just be devastating, to say the least. But it's not too bad if you take your time and you're careful. You can see there I'm pressing, rotating the mainspring, and I'm getting movement on the escapement there. And everything feels nice and smooth. Now you may notice that one screw is blued and the other two are not. And that is because I was showing somebody this beautiful duplex system of escapement, and I dropped this watch, believe it or not. And the result of that, I was so lucky. The balance pivot did not break, but these two screws did. And luckily enough, a modern screw seems to fit exactly as it should. So I owe it to this lovely piece to put it back together to the best of my abilities and keep her working for hopefully another 100 years. Let's add this ratcheting wheel. Now this one is important because there's a spring that holds this gear firmly against the ratcheting wheel. So what I have to do is pull back on that spring here using the needle, and then I'll set this gear into place. Yeah, that didn't work. So I had to do it off camera, but you can see the results here. Now that is working correctly. Time to move on to the click. Here is one of the most important pieces of the watch, underrated if you ask me, and that is the click. That allows us to release tension from the main spring. So again, we want to be very careful with this spring, as there are no replacements readily available. And now that we have that situated, let's add a little oil. Now when it comes to these old watches, less is more, or watches in general. And so I'm using a toothpick here to transfer some watch oil to the pivots. And that will help lubricate the shaft and that hole. I'll put a little bit here on the side of the gears so they can rotate smoothly against the back plate. But again, we don't want to put too much. Less is typically more. Now, I am aware you probably should be using grease for this. However, I will be most likely taking this apart again within the next year, because I do need to fix that screw or broken off screw just below the escapement wheel there. Now what that does is secure the movement to the case. I don't have a way to fix it today, so in the future that'll be another video of me repairing that broken screw. But that doesn't prevent me from using this pocket watch today. So, now that everybody's ready, I'm going to take out these screws and try not to breathe on this thing. Because I would have to start all over again should I bump that bridge. And that happens sometimes, that's part of it. But I'm going to try to avoid that if I can. Again, just taking extra caution here, because when I pull this screw up, I don't want that bridge to snag. Okay, whew. One more. Okay, everything seems fine. Here comes that back plate, and with a little bit of luck, let's see here. Now I do initially loosen the screws so I don't cross thread them. When you loosen, you'll feel a small click. That's the beginning of the thread. Now I'm pretty confident I didn't bump that bridge loose, and so I'm going to check here now. All right, that's what we want to see. Now it's time to add oil to the dial side. Yeah, that pivot got a little too much oil, but I come back later and take care of that with some Rodico. And just a bit to keep things moving smoothly here. And that gear also will need a little bit of lubrication. First, we'll drop this gear into position and secure it with a screw. There we go. And here's our hour wheel. It's important to get these gears to mesh. There we have it. Now this is aftermarket, but I did install or add this dial washer. It didn't originally come with this watch, but it seems to gain from it. So now that we've added our lovely enamel dial back on, time to give it a nice cleaning here with the little Rodico, and it's time to fit it with hands. Now this does always make me a little nervous. These hands are very unforgiving. And so for that reason, I use my tweezers and not my hand press because I feel like I have more control. And I'm very gently wiggling and pressing this hour hand onto the hour wheel. I'm happy with that. So now I'm moving on to the minute hand. And you know, I don't miss having a second hand on this watch. I think having the hour and minute just gives it a classy look. I appreciate the clean and simple look. Now here again, I feel more comfortable using the back side of a pair of tweezers to gently press on the minute hand, and on comes the front crystal to protect those hands. Now I could have put the balance wheel on earlier. However, putting it into the case makes me awful nervous. I've broken a watch previously casing, so I'm being extra careful here, knowing that this has the special duplex movement. I know this is going to make this job harder, but it feels safer to me. So, to spare you, the viewer, I've sped this video up. Now what I'm doing is very gently working the bridge into position, making sure that the gear is meshing with the balance wheel staff. There's a small slot cut into it that the smaller tooth of that escapement wheel engages with. The longer tooth of that gear rests against the balance staff itself, and that holds back the power from the mainspring. And so I'm very carefully and gently working this into position. There might be a better way to do it, but after some playing around, here's the results. And take a look at that. I personally really enjoy watching that escapement wheel. And on comes the back cover. And so I said I had something special in store for this watch, so using a bit of Fusion 360, I drew up this case holder. Next, I use my 3D printer to print the model that I drew. And after it came off the printer, I'm left with this. So it's time to add some watch straps. Now you might be wondering, why is the back open? Well, your wrist is actually partially what holds the pocket watch into that case holder itself. Go, being a bit finicky on me here. Now I always pull to make sure and that's why you should always check after reinstalling your watch bands before placing it on your wrist to catch that type of mistake right there. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Let's pull it. That looks good. Very nice. And I will simply slip this little beauty in through the back. Go. Now it is a bit of a snug fit, but it is needed to be worn to be safely secured. And there we have it on the wrist. And we'll give it a bit of a shake test here on the bench. Yeah, it feels good. It's surprisingly very comfortable and light. And beautiful, to say the least. At least in my opinion. So thanks again for sticking with me to the end. And catch you in the next one. Thanks, guys.